Hello, hello. Clean things up back here a bit. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. ADHD. Just is what it is. And it's marching band season. I am my son's marching band's official team photographer, which means that my camera setup is not here on the weekends because it is with me at marching band competitions. And for some reason, I always forget that it takes a few minutes to get things set back up. So, apologize for being a few minutes late. Happy ADHD Awareness Month. Trying to crank up the content a little bit, but it is also marching band season, so it's a little bit crazy. Busy around our house, so doing the best I can. But happy to be here with y'all today for some updates and some chat. And I'm going to roll the intro real quick, and then we'll get started with an icebreaker. And then we'll get into our topic of today, which is executive functions. What are they and why do they matter? We're going through the slides from the presentation that Dr. ADHD and I gave a few weeks ago at a conference here in Utah that was for families and parents primarily of kids with mental health conditions. So we were there kind of representing the ADHD autism sector, and it went really well. So I wanted to share kind of what we presented there. It was a very brief presentation, so it was just kind of an overview, and I felt like that is a good bit of information for ADHD Awareness Month for those who may not have a great grasp of what the executive functions are and how they impact day-to-day life. So that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to roll the intro real quick, and then we will get started with that. Charlotte, what are you doing? Charlotte has been on one today. She had, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Hi, I'm Nicole, and as you have probably guessed, I have ADHD. I live and breathe all things ADHD in my personal, family, and professional life. I have a background in psychology and special education, and I've gained a lot of knowledge over the years about ADHD, what it really is, how it touches every aspect of your life and the life of your child, as well as a wealth of information and strategies for living with ADHD and parenting kids with ADHD. In this community, we share stories, we learn together, and we support each other as we navigate all things ADHD. Welcome. Alrighty, so yeah, Charlotte's a little bit nutso back there. Can you see her? She's on this side now. Why do you calm down? There's your good girl. She's getting huge. She's been a little bit naughty the last few days. Over the weekend, she got bit or stung by something around her mouth, and her whole muzzle swelled up huge. So she's on Benadryl all weekend, and she's not today. So she's making up for lost time. She's a little cuckoo. Charlotte, for those of you who are new here, Charlotte is a service dog in training for my youngest son, who is almost 8 years old. Let's adjust my camera angle here. She's doing awesome. She's passed her public access and is now working on tasks, and she's just rocking it, and she's amazing. And so my son had strep throat last week. This is a kid with very extreme sensory stuff. And so we had to go get a throat swab, which any of you have kids with sensory issues, with kind of explosive, extreme reactions, you know the throat swab is like worst nightmare. But Charlotte came with us. She sat down next to him on the exam table. He wrapped his little arm around her and just got it done quick. And it felt like an absolute miracle. There were tears, but there was no screaming. There was no jumping off the table. There was no having to pin him down, hold his arms, anything like that. He just opened up, got his throat checked, and yes, indeed had strep. And it was awesome. She's just such a little miracle. So we really, really love her. So, icebreaker. I've got some of these table topics cards. I think we will go with something from the 90s today. Let's see what we draw. These are always a little bit nerve-wracking because I don't prepare for them. And this one is very timely. Do you believe Tupac's death was a conspiracy? There's recently been an arrest in Tupac's death. Honestly, I am not a very good child of the 80s and 90s because I don't know or have any, let's say, I don't know that much about Tupac's death, except that it happened and that there are a lot of people who think that it didn't. So I don't have any strong opinions one way or the other, but I am very interested to see what all comes out of this new information on Tupac's death. So if any of you have any firm feelings on this issue or would like to lead me down good rabbit holes to follow, I have a feeling this one is going to grab on to my hyper focus fairly quickly. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very glad that I'm in the LawTube fandom, for lack of a better word, because I'm very excited to see what happens with that now that they have an arrest. I didn't ever think that that would happen for sure, or that we would ever really find out what happened. So that's how I feel about the Tupac thing. I think I was a little bit young and definitely, I mean, I grew up in Utah, so not like a stronghold on that genre of music at that time. For me anyway, I was just a little innocent white girl. I just don't know that much about it, unfortunately. I remember it happening. I remember a lot of talk about it, but I was not plugged into that community at the time, so I don't have any firm feelings on the conspiracy of it. Honestly, I don't think it was so much a conspiracy as absolutely gang related, and I guess we're getting more information about that as this arrest is coming out. So those are my thoughts on Tupac. I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, let's dive into our topic today. I'm going to run a little swoop for you, and then let me get these slides up. Where did it go? Oh, sorry. I thought I was prepared. And then I realized how much stuff I have in this folder. There it is. Oh, slideshow is taking a little while to upload. Let's do another card, shall we? Maybe something I have a little bit stronger opinion on. I am not giving up on the 90s. Okay, this one I can definitely do. What boy band member were you in love with? So the boy band of choice for me was New Kids on the Block. I was fairly young. I was probably in like, let's see, I was probably in like second grade when my true love of New Kids on the Block came to full fruition. I was a Jordan fan, which was not the most popular. Everyone was in love with Joey. I really like Jordan. Of course, my mother really bought into the fact that I was into this boy band and bought me like all the things, like lunchbox, board game, all of the New Kids on the Block things, which made me look a little bit, I don't know, more obsessed than I was, I feel like. But I did have a major crush on Jordan from New Kids on the Block. Not a popular opinion. It was my hot take of the early 90s, late 80s, I guess. But no worries. If you can't stick around, I totally get it. Get sleep. Sleep is more important. You can catch the replay. And if you wouldn't mind just hitting the like button, please the YouTube gods. I am working on my first goal towards monetization, which is getting to 500 subscribers. We are creeping up on 200. And I would like to do some fun things, maybe some giveaways, maybe, I don't know, when we hit some of those milestones. So first milestone is 200. So if you can like the video, share it on social media and places, or any of my other content. I've been putting out some shorts. If you like those, I would be greatly appreciated. And Shima got the notification, but then got distracted. We all have ADHD here. No worries. And I always get a little distracted when we're starting anyway. Oh, see, this is perfect. This will be a good stream to have on in the background. I definitely am a person who has to always have something playing in the background. So I appreciate every minute that you watch, listen, or even just let the channel run in the background, because it helps me towards that first goal. As far as monetization goes, I'm not really looking for this to be like a huge stream of income, but really to just help pay for things for my kids, therapies, Charlotte's training and continual training, opportunities for my kids to travel with band, things like that is really what this channel is going to pay for if we get to monetization. And of course, then just reinvesting and making the channel better. So yeah, I appreciate all of it. I appreciate you being here, and any comments and questions. If you have a topic that you're interested in covering, especially this month as it's ADHD Awareness Month, I have a list of some ideas, but if you've got something you want addressed, on the community page, there is a post just asking for your ideas and topics that you want to see. I want to make sure that I'm making content that is helpful. So, all right, this thing is finally up here. There's a little Circle Clinic, and that's me and my husband, and this looks kind of funky on here, but all right. What is executive functioning? So part of this is going to be the slides that my husband was presenting for, so I'll do my best to fill in the gaps. I am not a psychologist. He is. So he covered more of the clinical. I covered more of the practical solutions, as I am more of a coach, and I'm a parent of these kids, and I'm the one that has ADHD and he does not. So excuse me. So some of these are going to be a little bit more clinical based because these are his slides, and I'm going to just do my best to give the information as I heard it from him or as I have discussed with him in the past, but with the caveat that he is a psychologist and I am not. So if I get it slightly wrong, I apologize. Oh, I got to pause 1 second because I'm getting... Okay, sorry. Message from the clinic that I needed to address real quick. I am the office manager for our clinic here in Utah. We run a clinic that's focused on neurodevelopment, ADHD, autism, learning disabilities. So every once in a while when I am doing this during the workday, I have to respond to a few little things, but hopefully that will be it for today. So, what is executive functioning? Executive functioning are brain-based skills that are needed to perform actions. That is the most simple definition that I can give you. Sorry, I'm going to mute for 1 second. Still just have this little bit of a lingering cough from being ill like several weeks ago, so I apologize. So there is not necessarily a consensus in the professional community about what the list of executive functions are. So there's a few of the kind of the leading researchers in ADHD, and one of them has a list of 7, another has a list of 11. There's a few different lists, but they all kind of cover the same topics. It's just what they call them is different. So this is the list that we're going to be operating from. This is the list that is presented in Peg Dawson and Richard Guary's research and books. They are the authors of the Smart But Scattered series. Great books if you are wanting to read more about executive functioning, and I'll give a few more of those resources later on. Sorry, that's horrible. So this is their list. And I just find it useful because it's the one that I'm using as an executive function coach. I've done my training with Peg Dawson. So this is the framework that we operate from. So you might see different titles of these if you're reading different books and things like that. I'm going to star this comment from, is it Jacqueline probably, because we are going to talk about that a little bit later, about getting buy-in and improving executive functions. So we're going to kind of go over background definitions, things like that, and then we are going to talk about ways to help later on in the stream. So I'm going to star that comment so we can come back to it. All right, here's our list. Response inhibition, working memory, emotional regulation, sustained attention, task initiation, planning and prioritization, organization, time management, goal-directed persistence, flexibility, and metacognition. All right, the race car analogy. So many of us have heard the race car analogy for ADHD brains, right? Which is kind of, we have Ferrari engines with tricycle brakes. That's not the same analogy we're talking about. What we're talking about here is all of the different functions of the car, right, that make it all operate together. So you've got brakes, you've got transmission, you've got the engine, you've got the power steering, you've got the right tires, axles, all of those things, right? And if any one of those is not functioning, your race car is not going to do very well on the track. So how many of you have ever tried to drive a car where the power steering wasn't working? That's kind of what it's like to have executive function deficits, right? So these different executive functions are really those sorts of things that help drive the car to point that in that race car where you want it to go. So Dr. Miles, or Dr. ADHD, I guess we call him on here, does a much better job. This is his analogy, and so that's kind of just a sum up of it. But let's talk about where are executive functions located and how do they develop. So this is kind of a basic picture of the brain. Most of this stuff is interesting, but you don't really need to know it for the purposes of this conversation. Except this one over here, the frontal lobes. And that is where executive functions develop. And that is where all the problems are for people who have ADHD and other executive function disorders. And we primarily talk about ADHD on here, but executive functioning can also be affected by things like traumatic brain injury, multiple concussions, post-concussive syndrome, autism spectrum disorder. And because all of those and any other neurodevelopmental condition, like specific learning disabilities, because all of that develops in this frontal lobe of the brain. It's also the last part of the brain to fully develop. So I know you've probably heard in the last few years, oh, the brain's not fully developed until, 21 to 25, 25 for males, 21 to 23 for females. It's excuse me. Oh, I'm going to mute for 1 second again. Try and get that frog out of my throat so I can talk. Okay. Most current research is now showing that frontal lobe development may not be complete until closer to 30, 35. So it's why teenagers make poor decisions. It's why, those things you do in your early 20s are not the same decisions you would make in your late 30s. It's why a lot of young marriages might not last. Now, I got married when I was 21. We just celebrated our 20-year wedding anniversary this year. So, but you have to grow and develop together at that point, right? But this frontal lobe is where executive functions develop, and it is the area of the brain that tends to be underdeveloped in people with ADHD. So we're going to split executive function skills into two categories. The first is the foundational skills, and this isn't giving me kind of one at a time, unfortunately. So hopefully you guys can read that. The first is response inhibition, the capacity to think before you act, the ability to resist the urge to say or do something. It allows us the time to evaluate a situation and how our behavior might impact it. Anyone have a problem with that? Right? This is the telltale kind of diagnostic criteria for ADHD, response inhibition. That inability to stop and think before we do something. It is a tricky one to develop. But it is a foundational skill in executive functioning. The next is working memory. Working memory is the ability to hold information in your brain while you're performing a complex task. So to test working memory, these are things like digit span. So the digit span test on a cognitive measure is they'll start by giving you 3 numbers and you repeat those back, and then 4, and then 5, and then 7, 9, 11, and keep going and see how many numbers can you hold in your brain at once. The average is 7 to 10, which is why phone numbers are 7 digits long, 10 if you add the area code, right? 7 to 11 is kind of the average range for working memory. And it works better if you chunk it, which is why you have dashes in between, right? You have 3 numbers, then 3 numbers, and then 4 numbers, because it's much easier to hold 3 numbers in your brain than it is to hold 7 individual digits. That's why we do things like, say, 70, 84, 92 instead of 708492. Easier to hold 3 numbers than 6. So working memory incorporates the ability to draw on past learning or experience to apply to the situation at hand or project in the future. So your working memory is where you're going to hold, oh, I've been in this situation before. This is what happened last time. I'm going to make a different decision. So you can imagine that working memory deficits can then have an impact on that impulse control, right? Because I'm sure as you've experienced as a person with ADHD or as a parent of a kid with ADHD, they don't tend to learn from those past mistakes, right? You end up having the same conversation over and over and over again. Like, okay, but remember last time when you didn't do your homework during the week and you had to do it all on the weekend and how unhappy you were. It's not going to have any effect on whether or not they do their homework next week. It's one of the reasons why that makes parenting these kids so difficult, is that working memory deficit and a few of these others that make it hard for them to learn from past situations. It's also something that really is rough on kids at school. When you're trying to take notes on something or at work, remembering, holding the information in your mind long enough to get it down on paper when a professor is talking, holding dates in your mind long enough to get them down in your planner. Working memory deficits are extremely common in people with ADHD. It's one of the indicators on neuropsych evaluations that ADHD might be there. Now, it's not diagnostic. It's not in the diagnostic criteria for ADHD. And you can have great working memory and still have ADHD. When my profile looks like that, one of my sons, his working memory is exceptional, and he's got a severe case of ADHD. So it's not a and it might present differently in standardized testing than it does in practical application. But it is one of the things that if you're doing a neuropsych eval, the psychologist will probably, and it shows up that there's a low score in working memory. It's lower than some of the other scores. That can be a flag that there might be ADHD here, and there might be wanting to dig a little deeper into that. Emotional regulation. We all know this one. The ability to manage emotions in order to achieve goals, complex tasks, or control and direct behavior. If you are a parent of a kid with ADHD, you know what emotional dysregulation looks like, right? It's extreme reactions. It's the short fuse, quick to anger, quick to meltdown, kind of being driven by their emotions as opposed to you being able to think about emotions. Flexibility, the ability to revise plans in the face of obstacles, setbacks, new information, or mistakes. It relates to an adaptability to changing conditions. So this is where that rigidity comes into place. Oh, I had this plan. The plan's changed. I can't adjust accordingly. And then oftentimes that comes out in emotional dysregulation, particularly for kids, but just kind of that basic inability to adjust what you had in mind can be a real problem. Sustained attention, the capacity to maintain attention to a situation or task in spite of distractibility, fatigue, or boredom. And this one is that diagnostic criteria for ADHD. And we all know, if you have ADHD, what this feels like, what it looks like in your kids. Now, there's a caveat to this sustained attention. It is that, a lot of, and I talked about this in a reel the other day, it's an inability to regulate that sustained attention, right? So this is saying to maintain attention to a situation when there's distractions, fatigue, or boredom. And boredom is a key one there, because on the other side of this, you've got hyperfocus, right? So if something is interesting, if something is giving that dopamine flood that our brains are craving, that attention can be sustained for sometimes indefinitely, right? You forget to go to the bathroom, you forget to drink water, you forget to eat sometimes. It's, there's a lot of kids with ADHD who sometimes will have problems with toileting accidents when they're hyper focused, because they're not seeing, and that's kind of all of these things working together, right? Response inhibition, flexibility, and problems with sustaining attention. It's the flip side problem of sustained attention, right? I am going to pause for 1 second. I got a situation I need to deal with real quick, so I'm going to mute, and I will put on a little background music for 1 second, and I will be Okay, sorry about that. This is life with ADHD and being a mom who works from home. All right, last one on here is task initiation. This happens to be my biggest weakness in my personal executive functions, and this is the ability to begin projects without undue procrastination in an efficient or timely fashion. Now, this kind of ties in with that dopamine thing, like, right? Things that are boring or they're just hard to start. And once you can kind of get started in the groove of things, then it all works out. But if you get interrupted, then you kind of have to start over. At least that is how it works for me. It's very tricky. And it's tricky as I'm also parenting kids who have these same difficulties, because I don't want to start either. So I get it. We'll talk about some strategies for all of these things in a bit, and we'll continue to talk about them. This is going to be a frequent topic here on this channel because that's what we do, right? But it is very tricky. I still haven't gotten it all figured out. Don't ask me to get started on housework or boring things for work. I have to kind of ease my way into those things or trick myself into do it by doing things like, as we talked about earlier, having things on in the background that I like. Again, we'll talk about some strategies here in a little bit, but let's get through the rest of the definitions first. All right, the advanced skills: planning and prioritization, the ability to create a roadmap to reach a goal or to complete a task. It also involves being able to make decisions about what's important to focus on and what's not important. This affects more areas than you think. The prioritization in particular. This is one that can affect things like communication, conversations, text messages, or emails. For me, the prioritization part comes out in not knowing what information I need to have in and what I don't. So put a star or a heart in the chat or in the comments below if you're in replay crew, if this sounds familiar to you. When you write a text message, there are multiple parentheses, dashes, or ellipses, dots, where you're adding more and more background information in. Or you send one line, and then you send a little bit more, and then you send a little bit more. So what should have been a brief text message ends up being about 10. Or you're in a conversation in a group of people, and you're telling a story, and you realize that you have gone off on 3 or 4 different tangents because you don't know how much background you should explain. I live in this world. It's also why we tend to overshare, right? We don't know what information is needed to get our point across. That is a prioritization problem. I don't know what's important and what's not to help people understand what I'm trying to say. I think a part of that also comes into play because I've been misunderstood many times in the past, right? So in those social interactions, I'm struggling to make sure that I'm being understood and that I'm not coming across a way that I didn't intend. So planning and prioritization is oftentimes, along with some of these other skills we'll talk about later, but it becomes that one of the things that makes social interactions difficult and why people with ADHD tend to have a problem socially. We all know, the Autism Speaks and autism awareness campaigns of the last, 15 to 20 years have been phenomenal for those people. Everyone knows that people with with autism struggle socially, and people are much more patient with them as a result, right? what people don't understand is that people with ADHD often have some similar struggles. They come from a different place, right? It's not necessarily the fundamental not understanding social rules and how social interactions and society operates like it is with autism. It is more of an impulse control, a prioritization, a metacognition, a short-term memory problem. So it comes from a different place, but it can often look the same. So it's why there's so much overlap between ADHD and autism. But people don't necessarily know that about ADHD. One of my kids is very borderline. We've often wondered, okay, is he possibly on the spectrum? And it's still possible he may be. But there's just some definite telltale things that are like, this is definitely not. This might be. But when he was younger, he was really involved in competitive baseball. I oftentimes wished I could just say, oh, he has autism, because I knew that coaches, teammates, other families would be more patient and understanding with some of his behaviors and his social interactions and the way he wasn't necessarily fitting in or looking the same as the other kids on the teams. Eventually that not looking right, that those kind of coach adult pleasing behaviors, not looking the part, ended up being what ended baseball for him. He was eventually cut from his team, and decided not to continue in baseball because that social piece was going to continue to impact him as he got older. He did not look the part. He did not stand at attention and stare at the coach. He did not automatically, just jump when coach says jump. He would think through and be like, okay, but this last time you told me this, and he would make different decisions. And that was extremely frustrating for coaches. He also could be really obnoxious in the dugout to other teammates. He wasn't that necessarily typically invested in the outcome of the game. He was there to have fun and play, and he loved it, but he didn't get real upset if they lost. Like, he didn't have that same level of winning drive. And as he got older, that became something that coaches weren't willing to deal with anymore, basically. And so he stopped playing baseball. It's pretty painful for me to watch that happen to him. He's fine now. He's plugged into marching band, and it's been the best thing ever for him to be involved in an amazing music program. But those social skills, I feel like if I could have at that time been like, hey, this is a kid on the spectrum, that he would have been treated differently. And they would have been more patient with some of those behaviors because he was a good player. So yeah, that was a little bit of a tangent, but that's why I feel like this channel and some of the other things that I do to bring awareness to ADHD and what it really is are so vitally important. It's why I'm trying to put out more shorts, because they're more easily digestible to share with people. The streams are amazing for us in this community to learn together and to have a community to come together, about topics and feel heard and learn and all of that together. But it's, you're not going to send this stream to grandma who doesn't understand ADHD, or to, your cousin to help understand your kids. So trying to put out more kind of shorts, and that's kind of more what my Instagram channel is. If you're looking to help people out that way to help understand your kid or yourself better, those shorts are a good way to do that. I think the more awareness we get out about this, the better off future generations of ADHD kids are going to be when that understanding is there. Like, the Autism Speaks campaigns and things like that people understand that a lot more about those kids, and they have, they have more understanding. People think ADHD is just, being a hyper kid, and there's just so much more to it. So I'll get off that soapbox for now, but can't promise I won't get back on. But let's move on to organization. The ability to create and maintain systems to keep track of information or materials. Now, for me, it was the maintain systems, and still is. I'm great at oh, sorry, got another message from the office. Sorry. I need to do these later in the day, but then I have kids home, so I just get interrupted every once in a while by office management things. Eventually, I'm going to be able to hire someone to take over some of the day-to-days, and that won't happen as much, but can't promise it for a while. So I'm good at creating systems, particularly creating systems for other people, which is why I believe myself to be a good coach for parents, parenting coach and executive function coach, because I can see what needs to be there and I can create the system. Maintaining it for myself and for my kids is another story. I won't let you see what my office looks like at the moment. It will have to be cleaned up this week because my office is also doubles as our guest room when we have family in town, and my sister is coming to town for a few days. So I got to get myself cleaned up and organized here a little bit better. But organization is one of the bigger executive function areas that impacts people, right? It's using a planner effectively, knowing how to use a planner. And some of that comes down to that prioritization and planning piece too, right? Is what do I write down and when? But maintaining the system, because eventually the system gets boring and it no longer interests us. It no longer gives that dopamine release when you fix the thing. And so organizational systems need to be changed and revamped frequently. For me, it's about every 3 months. I got to come up with a change in the system to help us stay on track. An organization is one where outside supports can be really helpful to help get you on a system and provide some feedback and motivation to continue with it. Time management, the capacity to estimate how much time one has, how to allocate it, and how to stay within time limits and deadlines. It also involves a sense that time is important. Time is a construct, right? This is the one I think that I was the most surprised by when I realized that not everyone has it. I thought everyone's brains work like this with time, right? Turns out most people have kind of an internal sense of time, of how time passes, how long something is going to take, how much time they have to complete something. It's why people with ADHD are frequently late or overcompensate by being really early all the time. That's not me. I'm always late. I always think that I can get more done in the time that I have left before I have to leave, or that it won't take me as long to get someplace as I thought it would, or just I can't figure out why. Like, I knew it was going to be 30 minutes. I knew I needed to leave at a certain time, and how somehow between like my bedroom, getting ready, and leaving the house, it's been more than 5 minutes. It's been 20. So I'm late. I don't think I realized this until I was having these conversations with my husband, and he could just be like, yeah, it's been about 20 minutes. And I was like, how did you know that? And he's like, I don't know. It just has. Like, that's how much time has passed. And for me, I have no concept of how much time has passed, which is why I use one of these all the time. Visual timer. This one's called the Time Timer Mod. It's just a little one. We have about 10 of these in our house. I keep them everywhere. They have bigger versions, smaller versions, But as opposed to a digital timer, which doesn't really give you a sense of time passing, these do, because as the timer goes, the little thing gets smaller, so you can like actually visually see the time passing. But it's why, a kid cleaning their room for 5 minutes feels like 10 hours, and playing video games for 5 minutes feels like 5 seconds. Our brains just don't process time in the same way. It's very confusing. Goal-directed persistence, the capacity to have a goal, follow through to the completion of the goal, and not be put off or distracted by competing interests. I can tell you, when I go to bed at night, I always have very high hopes and great intentions for how much I'm going to get done the next day. And then morning comes and I'm still tired and I don't want to get started. And that task initiation thing hits, and procrastination and planning and getting started and all the things I have to do before I can start the things. Um, those goals, it's kind of that concept of like bit off more than I can chew, or I ordered too much at the restaurant. My eyes are bigger than my stomach, right? My intentions and my goals are always bigger than what I can complete and what I do get done, just because of things like distractions um, and competing interests. I would rather watch a show, dink around on my phone, create something in Canvas or in Canva. Canva I use for work and creating like digital images, things like that. Canvas is the program that my kids' school uses for grades and stuff. And I'm mixing up the two all the time. Canva and Canvas. Canva, I really could get lost in for a long time, and I get hyper focused and have to get all the little details right. And I would rather do that and build systems that I always forget to print off for my kids than do boring things like billing reports and some of the other things that I need to get done for work, because there's some boring things. Shima, whenever you got to go is totally fine. I always appreciate you being here. You're a great supporter of the channel and happy to have you here whenever you can. I know we're on very different time zones, so if you need to catch on replay, that is totally fine. But love seeing you here in the chat and I appreciate you being here. This last one is kind of the last one to develop in brains, and is metacognition. Big word for the way it's always like seared into my brain from my cognition professor in my undergrad. She was such an inspirational lady. Loved her. Her classes were hard. She taught biopsychology and cognition. They were the hardest classes in the major. They were also the classes that I did the best in. She was a fantastic teacher, and the content was interesting and challenging. I loved it. But she always said metacognition, thinking about your thinking. The definition that is given kind of by Peg Dawson and Richard Guari in their books is the ability to stand back and take a bird's eye view of oneself in a situation. It's an ability to observe how you problem solve. It also includes self-monitoring and self-evaluative skills. How am I doing, or how did I do? And this is that one that we talk about with social skills. That I was saying earlier, one of the other skills we talk about later is this metacognition. That ability to self-evaluate, right? And see what your behavior looks like from the outside, see what your problem solving strategies are, being able to monitor. Ooh, butternut squash. It is a pain in the neck to chop. I will give you that. And then your hands are like orange and weird for a while. But I make a really good butternut squash soup that I'm going to have to figure out a recipe for that's compliant with my current diet because I like to throw a lot of brown sugar and cream cheese in it. And I can't have either of those things right now, but it is the season for butternut squash. And ooh, I don't like a lot of squash. I do love butternut squash. Sorry, I got distracted by butternut squash. Now I'm like thinking about how I can make my yummy butternut squash soup. Distraction. This is what this is for, right? I need a shorter one that's just like ADHD, squirrels. Okay, so those are the definitions of those skills. So let's talk about problems that come with executive functioning disorders. And I went over a little bit of this in the definitions, so we'll just kind of go through this pretty quickly unless something stands out to me. Initiation, activation. So activation is kind of like that getting started, right? But it doesn't only mean like task initiation, but also like just getting moving in general, right? Sustaining attention and prioritizing attention. Tunnel vision or hyper focus, right? This thing exists and nothing else does. Sustaining mental effort. So when something is hard and boring, being able to persist on that task for a long period of time. Completing tasks. I am the queen of like 90% complete. Impulse control. Like, so for me, example of the completing tasks problem for me is when I work on like a decluttering project, right? So helping my kid clean out his closet or cleaning out and organizing the toy closet, right? Pull everything out, get it all in piles. I got things to go in the donation pile. I'm putting all the things in the thing. And all I need to do to have it be complete is take the bag to the donation place and put the labels on the bins. Now, if I actually got the labels on the bins, guess what? My kids would know where to put the things. And maybe it would stay a little better organized for a little bit longer because they know, oh, this goes in this place, this goes in this place. And this happens for me too, right? But I don't ever get the labels on the things. So they don't know that I've been like rearranged their drawers and this goes in. So yeah, that's a problem. Getting the labels on the things and donating the pie. So I have currently right now have like 4 boxes and like 2 trash bags full of things that I need to take to our like local thrift place to donate. Sitting in the hallway in our upstairs between the bedrooms. They drive me crazy. I'm walking past them constantly. They've been there collecting for several months now. I also have 3 random baskets of laundry that are kind of the like, I was folding laundry or I was doing a project and I just threw those things in the basket so I could finish the project, but then I never empty out the basket. So my room just ends up piled with random laundry baskets of random stuff, which then becomes a new project, right? So completing tasks, especially home-related tasks for me, whew, it's an issue. And things that don't have a deadline, right? If they don't have like they must be done by this day, then that last 10% may never get done. Drives me crazy. I need to get help. I do have a cleaning lady that comes every other week, and I'm hoping in the future, as the business grows, and honestly, as the channel grows, that would be something I would put monetization money towards because it allows me to have more time to create and less time doing those little things, is to have her come once a week and help me with some of those organization projects because I do end up with a lot of piles around and they're starting to make me crazy, but I don't have time to deal with them between all the jobs and the kids. Work has been really intense lately. It's the good kind of intense. We're having good business growth, but we're at a point where a lot of that growth has piled tasks onto my plate that I don't want to be doing rather than the tasks that I would rather be doing, which is actually working with clients. But again, random tangent on completing tasks. Impulse control, we all know what that looks like. Emotional regulation, we talked about. Shifting cognitive set and transitioning. So shifting cognitive set is kind of the ability to move between tasks, and it kind of goes along with that flexibility thing, right? Like being able to easily shift from one thing to the next. And transitioning is, again, moving from one task to another task, from one situation to another situation. It is something that is impacted by the time blindness, time management piece, and flexibility, and planning and prioritization, and lots of other things. But that's why often our kids need multiple reminders that a transition is coming, stopping one task and starting another, stopping something that's fun and moving to something that's boring, or just being able to shift out of like a hyper focus, things like that. Transitions can be really, really tough. Managing boredom. This is one that causes like kids with ADHD a lot of problems. It's managing boredom, because boredom is the worst feeling in the world. I actually found an essay that one of my sons wrote in, like, I want to say 5th grade. And I saved it because he had written a persuasive paragraph on why boredom is the worst feeling in the world. And this is a kid who, like, 2 years previously had like a major arm break. Like, I could find the picture for you, but it's gross. Like, his arm was here, like it was supposed to be straight like this, and it went like this. He swung off the monkey bars at the park and landed like this, and his arm snapped both bones through, and it was bad break. And in his essay, he said that he would rather break both of his arms at the same time than be bored. That's how painful boredom is for kids with ADHD. It is extremely uncomfortable feeling. And so they do what we have coined poking the environment. And if you just imagine, right, this is what these kids with ADHD start doing when they're bored. They're bugging their friend. They're, ooh, what does this do? I'm going to just touch this, grab this, throw this, squish this. I'm just going to see what can happen, because they're trying to feed that dopamine in their brain and just do something. Their brain is just firing and wants input. And so they start bugging everybody. As a parent, if you have a kid with ADHD, you have seen this poking the environment. And you know exactly what we're talking about. It is the thing that gets kids in trouble at school. It is the thing that gets kids in trouble at home. It is the thing that makes it difficult for kids to have friendships. This poking the environment, right? It's annoying as all get out. Managing boredom is very, very tricky, because our brains are short on dopamine, and so we're seeking, right? So seeking behaviors. Failing to update mental models. So this is kind of what we talked about with this, like, inability to like see how your past behavior or your strategies aren't working, and then be able to change them, right? We get stuck in this certain view of the world. For a lot of kids, this is a negative attribution error problem, right? Like, they are all doing this on purpose, as opposed to like gathering that information and viewing it and making adjustments to that mental model. I am not very good at explaining that. That is more of a clinical psychologist sort of something they handle with. That is dealing with is mental models. It's something that cognitive behavioral therapy addresses. But the next one, failing to connect current behavior with future outcomes. So just an inability to see how what they're doing will impact, like, what the consequences of their behavior might be. Understanding time, we talked about. Communicating intent. communicating relevant information and just the relevant information and not the irrelevant information. But both are true, right? Uh, Getting to the point and communicating the thing that's the actual problem as opposed to kind of talking around it. Planning and organization, regulating intensity. So, intensity is an interesting one. So, when we talk about behaviors, right, especially problem behaviors, there's three things we're looking at. We're looking at frequency, duration, and intensity. Which of those things do you think gets kids into the most trouble? When you're thinking about problem behaviors, is it frequency? Is it duration? So, how long the behavior lasts? Or is it intensity? A lot of people think it's frequency, but really, it's the intensity of the behavior, right? It's the extreme, it's the too much, too loud. It's the instead of just being angry and kind of punching the person, it's diving after and going for the throat, right? See it, you Shima, I see you there. Frequency. That is when we ask that question to parents, we ask this question in the presentation. How many of you think it's frequency? 80% of the people raise their hand for frequency. But a frequent small behavior is not going to get you as in trouble as a one-time really intense behavior, right? So this ability to regulate the intensity of the behavior, the volume of the voice, the extreme and the reaction, it comes with that emotional regulation piece a lot of the times. And so stepping back and trying to address that intensity of behavior is something that we do a lot, is something that when we're in with clients and with our own kids for behavior intervention plans, even professionals will tend to go towards frequency of the behavior when the problem really is intensity, and we're not necessarily always measuring intensity. We're measuring frequency, and but often not measuring duration and intensity, and those are the ones that actually are the most problematic for these kids. So yeah, interesting one. We'll maybe have to dive into a little bit more of kind of classical behavioral psych at some point. It's where a lot of my background comes from. Understanding nonverbal cues. So we know, kids with autism have a hard time with nonverbal, right? ADHD, we also have a problem with nonverbal cues, but it's for a different purpose, right? It's not this fundamental misunderstanding like we talked about earlier of the nonverbal cues, but it's oftentimes just missing those nonverbal cues because attention is not there, or this kind of inability to filter all the information that's coming in will frequently miss the nonverbal cues or misinterpret the nonverbal cues. There's a lot of reasons why we'll misinterpret nonverbal cues, but that is a problem with executive functioning. Socially appropriate responses. Again, sometimes that comes with the intensity. It's also regulation, inhibition. I'm sure. Raise your hand, put a star or heart in the chat or in the comments if you have ever been in a situation where you blurted out something you should have and didn't realize until afterwards how cringy that moment was. It's that filter, right? That response inhibition and just blah! And then giving expected responses similar, right? And a lot of that is just that inability to stop and think and not understanding or seeing the effects of our previous behavior in a current situation. All right. Next, what do these problems look like? So we talked about what are the problems. Here's kind of how they might be manifest, poking the environment. We talked about zoning out, annoying others, not stopping when asked or told to stop, volume too loud when excited, giving up on hard tasks, arguing or defiance, getting stuck on tiny details or semantics, Um, this one comes up a lot with several of our kids, but um, trying to think of a good solid example. Um, this is kind of but that's not what you said, right? You said this, like, as opposed to listening to the whole meaning of the sentence, like picking apart specific words. Struggling to move on to the next task, not following directions, or failing to follow all of the directions, getting upset when things aren't easy, when other people make noise, when they get bored, etc. Overreactions, impulsivity, the why'd you do that? I don't know. Um, really, honestly, a lot of the times they don't know why they did the thing. It is not they're just saying that because they don't want to think about it. They really, truly just don't know. It was just impulsivity. Getting stuck or taking a long time to do simple tasks. And we'll talk a little bit about that more when we get to some of the strategies. So here we go with what can we do to strengthen executive functioning. I'm going to pull up one more some of my notes. Now we're into my section of the presentation. Where did I save that? I thought it was in here. There it is. Okay. So the first thing in here is evaluating executive functioning. And I'm not going to talk a ton about this except to say that there are formal ways of evaluation for areas of executive functioning. There are some that are a little bit more informal if you're working with a coach, or there are some books that you can get. I recommend the Smart But Scattered series. Let's see, do I have them down here? They might still be upstairs. There are several. There's a kids one, there's a teens one, there's a I can't remember what the title of the one. There's one for kind of the failure to launch group, right? The post high school kind of what do we do next, getting stuck. I think it's Smart But Scattered but Stalled is that one. And then there's Smart But Scattered Guide to Success, I think is what it's called. Is there one for adults? They have some kind of rating scales and checklists in there that you can evaluate what your individual strengths and weaknesses are in executive functions. I will do a stream if I can make a note of that right now. Where's my Where's my notebook for that? Is this it? Nope. Content notebook. Ugh, I cleared off my desk to do some paperwork stuff last week, and I can't remember where I put anything. Did too good of a job of clearing it off. Oh, there it is. This is my content ideas one, and I'm going to put in here self-assessing executive functions, coaching. The pen is dying. There it goes. Okay, make note of that. That'd be a good future video. So we're gonna move on to ways to adapt the environment. So we want to set ourselves and our kids up for success. So what are ways that we can adapt the environment? Adding physical barriers and providing limits/boundaries. So keep fewer toys in your kid's bedroom. Minimize distractions is kind of, one of the things you always put in the 504 plans and the IEP plans, and whether or not it actually gets done, it just kind of tends to be one of those standards things. But keep things places where they can't get to them, things that are off limits, or put an extra barrier in place for yourself. to get to that thing. For example, we have our fridge and pantry upstairs, and it's full of food, right? Um, but we have kind of the highly preferred snacks, the things that the kids tend to like just get into and eat the whole box, like fruit snacks, granola bars, chips for lunches, juice boxes, really kind of all of those like extra things that we pack in school lunches and after school snacks. We have those in a separate pantry in the basement that has a locked handle on it that requires a thumbprint from either myself or my husband in order to open. I put my own treat. I don't have a lot of treats right now, but when I did, I would put them down there too. And the ones my husband would get because we'd have the same problem, right? I want a snack. I want to just grab something fast that gives a little dopamine hit, the sugary things. But if there's that added barrier of, okay, now I have to go into the basement and unlock a door to get to it, it gives me time to think about, okay, maybe I should get something a little better. And the things that are closer at hand and easier to grab are fresh fruits and vegetables in the fridge, yogurts. We have some like protein bars, nut bars, things like that, nuts, seeds, healthier snacks that we keep in the you can access this all the time pantry. It's just an additional physical barrier to number one, keep us from having to make a trip to Costco twice a week to get all of those snacks and spending inordinate amounts of money on them. And also encouraging better choices when it comes to, I need a snack. Okay, go grab some beef jerky out of the cupboard instead of 4 chocolate chip granola bars from the downstairs pantry. So adding those physical barriers and providing limits and boundaries, place things that are off limits, make them off limits. We keep screens, we keep their like VR headsets, which is a whole other thing. It was a bribe. My son was bribed heavily by his grandmother to try marching band. Grandma gets to do whatever she wants. She spoils her grandbabies rotten, and she gets to do that because she's grandma. She owns her own business and has disposable income. And if she wants to spend it spoiling her grandbabies, that's fine. But we keep those locked in the same pantry in the basement with the thumbprint so that they have to kind of pass off their tasks they have to do before screens with us before they can access them. So the Xbox controllers, the tablets, the VR headsets, things like that are kept behind that locked door. So that we can limit their use, right? They have screen time limits. When the timer goes off, things get locked back up. It just creates another physical barrier to encourage them to do other things besides screens. Screens are tough with kids with ADHD. They're tough with adults with ADHD because they provide such an easy dopamine hit. It's too easy. And too intense. It's just flood of dopamine. It's a problem. So we provide limits, screen time limits on phones. We do this for ourselves, right? I do it for myself for social media. When that screen time limit is up, the app locks down and I have to walk away from it. Otherwise, because of that time blindness, we can lose a lot of time, right? Reducing distractions. So have quiet homework hours where, other distracting things are not on in the house. Reducing distractions during morning routines and bedtime. Noise canceling headphones, white noise, listening to music to filter out distractions. I have one son who his brain runs on music and he has those phones on all day. Just limiting the input to the one thing. I myself have a lot of auditory sensitivities, so I have several sets of noise canceling. My AirPods are in almost all day on noise canceling, even if there's nothing playing, just to reduce the amount of stimulus in my house. And especially when I'm driving, I know a lot of people don't like having headphones in when driving, but for me, it actually helps me stay focused on the driving and not distracted by all the noises in the back seat. But I also have some noise dampening, so it just brings the decibels down to a manageable level for me. Providing organizational structures. This is a place for everything, everything in its place, right? How do we do that for ourselves? How do we do that for our kids? Labels help. That's what I use my Cricut for. Um, Actually having an organized system and teaching it to everyone. This is where the things go. Sometimes making it visual, when the room is really clean, take a picture of it and post that. This is what it looks like when it's clean and organized. Create checklists, post visual clues. This is what the bathroom countertop should look like when it's clean. This is what, so they providing those organizational structures. This is something that I do in my coaching with parents in particular, is to help create those organizational structures for families so they have a good family system that they're working with. Having simple rules that are standard and never change really helps. The next one, reduce the social complexity of an activity or an event. So, provide structure for social situations. If you're having kids come over to play, have a planned activity or go someplace where things are planned so that there's already expectations of behavior in place, that there is an activity to be done. So it's not just free chaos. It gives them a way to kind of organize what's going on and keep it within certain limits. Choosing the right extracurricular activities for kids, things that are highly structured, but also choosing the right people, right? The right coaches who are understanding the right, a lot of times ADHD kids end up in more non-traditional extracurricular activities like rock climbing, skateboarding, kind of more fringe sports or sports where there's less kind of really more the individual sports like swimming, where they're more competing against themselves, but there are also a lot of physical activity and structure to what they're doing. Swim team is a great one for kids with ADHD. Track, music, also doing things that are like individualized in that private coaches, private lessons for things. We found a martial arts studio for my oldest when he was younger. He needed some structure. Those can tend to be very highly structured, but some of them are almost too structured. And the kids don't always do best in the group setting. So the place that we ended up choosing was one that had a private lesson model. So he would have a private lesson every week where he was working on his individual skills, and then he could go to as many group classes as he wants. So earlier on, we didn't go to very many. And then later, as he got better at managing that environment, we added in some of the group classes that had fewer numbers in them. This goes for adults too, picking the right kinds of social activities, finding your place. It's a lot easier as an adult to do that. Although it can be hard to find necessarily, but I feel like, you don't have kind of the social stigmas around some of those groups. But D&D clubs at school, chess clubs are great. Find your local game store. They usually host nights for things like Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons. But whatever your thing is, find your group. My husband always says frequently to clients, adults and teenagers in particular, is figure out what you like to do and find the people who like to do that thing and do it with them. Right? Shima, this is why I decided to do this channel. I'm not diagnosed, but I've never felt so validated than here and some LawTube streams. A lot of the LawTube streams are kind of what made me think that I wanted to do this, start this this channel and have this community because of this right here, right? There are many, many, many adults who were never diagnosed who have found that commonality, and it was something that happened for me too. Talking about it and learning more about it in the context of my kids and professionally is what led me to understand more about myself, and realizing that there was a reason for all these difficulties, right? So I'm very, very glad to hear this. Um, this is why I'm doing this, right? Is to provide that validation, and a group for a belonging, a place where we can all understand each other better, and increase that education and have a community, because community, it makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being here. Be prepared, make the task more manageable. So breaking it down, make it shorter, simplify, break down into manageable chunks, make steps more explicit. For example, simple tasks like brush your teeth, right? When we tell a kid to brush her teeth, or when we think I need to go brush my teeth, ooh, I got to pause for 1 second. I got something I got to deal with the clinic. So hold, please. I'm going to put some music on and we'll come back to this. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. This is why sometimes I haven't been getting on when I wanted to, because things like this come up, but hopefully y'all will forgive me. I've just decided I need to just keep going forward with streams and that there will be potential interruptions like that. So I appreciate you all being patient with me. Okay, let's go back to making the task more manageable. I had to catch my breath. I had to run up 2 flights of stairs to grab something to send. Okay. So we're talking about breaking down tasks into more manageable chunks. So for example, the example of brushing your teeth, right? Charlotte, come. Make sure she's not getting in trouble. Charlotte, come. I can hear her up there. Charlotte, come. Come on. Hold on. Got to get the naughty puppy before she destroys something. Charlotte. Good girl. Okay. Yes, she is amazing and doing great with her training, but she is still an 8-month-old puppy, so I have to make sure she's supervised. Whew, okay. So brushing your teeth is actually a multi-step task, right? You have to go into the bathroom, turn on the water, get your toothbrush, put toothpaste on the toothbrush. So you've got 2 minutes of boring doing nothing but brushing your teeth. Then you have to spit, rinse off your toothbrush, rinse out the sink, right? So it really is a multi-step task. So recognizing tasks that we traditionally see as one task, like do the dishes, do the laundry, right? That are actually multi-step tasks, and how can we break those down into more manageable chunks with kind of rewards for each step of the process. Clean your room is another example, right? Cleaning your room is a huge multi-step task. So breaking that down for kids in particular, but also for ourselves of, okay, step 1, pick up all the trash off the floor, put it in the trash can. Step 2, pick up any laundry off the floor, put it in the hamper. Step 3, pick up toys that are on the floor or books on the bookshelf, right? Breaking it down, giving ourselves and our kids easy step-by-step process of how to accomplish a task is huge. This goes for us with our to-do lists, right? We make these to-do lists that are 50 miles long. Figuring out how to prioritize that to-do list. Okay, what are the things that need to be done today? How do I break down those tasks into manageable chunks and make a to-do list with that? Because crossing things off that to-do list is extremely satisfying. But when you have a to-do list that's 65 points long, it's really hard to get started on that. Where do you begin? So taking the time at the beginning of the day or the night before when you're not kind of in the moment of it, of being like, these are all the things I want to get done tomorrow, of realistically looking at it being like, here's the top priority things, and building into that plan breaks, rewards, and fun things. Those are all great strategies for dealing with these executive functioning deficits. And then the last, kind of adapting the environment. These are the antecedent control things, right? The before, antecedent behavior, consequence. These are the before things, is being prepared. looking at what's coming up, and this is hard for us as adults with ADHD um, to do. It's something we have to set aside time for and reward ourselves for and get in the habits of, because it requires an executive functioning. But it's something that if we're doing for ourselves and for our kids, can really impact how things go. So if there's a change in the routine, if you're going to a restaurant, right? If you're someone who really struggles with making decisions in the moment, especially when there's lots of talking, if you're going out with a friend, look at the menu ahead of time and think about what you might want to order. Now, giving yourself the flexibility that when you get to the restaurant, that might not sound good anymore, giving yourself a few options, but limiting kind of the overwhelm of all of that sensory input, especially, if you're going to a loud restaurant or it's busy and there's a lot of people. A lot of that input can make it really hard for us to settle in on what to order. If you're taking kids to a restaurant, bringing activities, these are times when we hand our youngest a tablet, because the overall experience for all of us will be much more enjoyable if he has something that he can focus on. He doesn't eat food at restaurants. He isn't going to sit and chat with us. Having the expectation that your kids, who aren't very chatty people and struggle socially, are going to sit down and have a nice adult conversation at a restaurant. That's, manage your expectations, know what you can expect. Be like, okay, we're going to sit and chat for 5 minutes and then you can have your tablet. Or, we're going to dinner with grandma. Grandma's going to want to hear about this, that, and the other. And then you can have this activity, right? So being prepared, knowing what's coming up, having some kind of plan A, plan B, plan C situation so that you don't run into flexibility issues. Is how we can kind of prevent a lot of the problems and set our kids and ourselves up for success. Then we get to teaching executive skills directly. How do we now, we've done kind of the accommodating for the deficits. Now we want to start teaching executive skills directly. And this is going to be scaffolding support with manageable goals. Okay. So scaffolding is a word that's frequently used in behavioral psych. I want you to imagine a building, right? If they're building a high rise, what that scaffolding looks like, right? You've got all these supports around the structure to keep it in place while things are being finished. And then we take those scaffolds down, right? So scaffolding is the idea of having more support at the beginning and then reducing that support gradually over time, not just pulling it all away at once. Hold on, I'm just writing down scaffolding as a video or a shorter video, not a longer live stream, because it's a really important thing to know how to do. So what does that look like? A lot of times when we're dealing with schools, what happens with these kids is we put all these different supports in place, right? Accommodations, IEP goals. They have maybe an aide or a student advocate that they're working with, and all of a sudden they're doing really, really well. And so the school might see, look, they don't need help anymore. And they just pull it all away, right? What happens? Utter failure. So we don't want to pull the supports away that are making the person successful, right? We want to kind of gradually reduce those supports. So instead of we're meeting with the advocate every single day, maybe now we're moving to every other day, and then once a week, and then once every other week, and then once a month, as long as they maintain those skills. So for each skill that you're trying to teach your kid, that you're trying to work on, for every goal, we want to know, okay, what are the supports we're going to put in place in the beginning? And then we need to have a plan for gradually reducing those supports over time. So if your kid is getting a reward for filling in their planner every day, and you all of a sudden stop giving the reward, are they going to just completely stop? We want to reduce that reward over time. We want to reduce those supports over time and maintain a habit. A lot of teaching executive skills is setting goals and creating habits and then building upon those habits, right? Breaking it down. The next kind of point is setting small, let's see, do I have, yeah. So scaffolding, then setting small, manageable goals that we can build on, right? So imagine, and all of us do this, right? At the beginning of a school year or the beginning of, at New Year's, we have all of these goals. I'm going to exercise every day. I'm going to only eat healthy. I'm not going to eat any sugar at all, right? And how long do those goals last? Weeks, maybe a month. Definitely by April, all those goals are out the window, right? Because we're trying to do too much all at once. So when we're setting up these organizational systems, when we're, teaching these goals, we've got to remember that if we go too big all at once, it's not sustainable. So we can have the big goal, we can have the exercise every single day goal, but we need to break that goal down into smaller benchmarks, right? If we're going from I'm not exercising at all in December to I want to spend an hour at the gym every single day in January, that's a pretty big leap. So maybe we just say, okay, by the end of the year, we want to be in the gym every day. Now, how do we get there? Well, 1 month before that, I should probably be in the gym for 30 minutes every day or for 45. And before that, I'm at 30 minutes. And before that, I'm at 30 minutes 4 times a week, and then 3 times a week, 2 times a week, 1 time a week. So what's the first step? My first step might be I'm going to go to the gym once a week for 15 minutes. And when I'm doing that regularly, then I'm going to add twice a week for 15 minutes. And then maybe I'll bump it up to 30 minutes twice a week, right? So breaking that goal down, whatever our long-term goal is, into smaller goals that we can build on. If we try to do too much too fast, it's not going to happen. It's not sustainable. It's not achievable. It's not realistic, right? So SMART goals. You've probably heard this before, but we're going to go over it because we always need the reminders. A goal should be specific. We can't just say, I'm going to exercise, right? We have to say, I want to do 30 minutes of cardio 3 times a week. And I want to have that goal achieved by April 1st, right? Timely and time bound are 2 different things we use for that T. So specific, measurable. Can I measure it? Can I say, I went to the gym more? That's a great overall goal. But the measurable part is going to be, did I go for 30 minutes or did I go for 25? There's got to be a measurable piece in there so that you can see, kind of chart, right? The progress. It has to be achievable. Again, I can't go from not going to the gym at all in December to going and running 5 miles a day in January. You'll break your body, right? Shin splints, knees will give out. It's not going to go well. You got to build up to it. Realistic, again, and timely or time bound. So it needs to have a date. It's got to have I'm going to do this by this time. And it can't be in 5 years because that's too far down the road, right? Involving your child. Now, this presentation again was being presented to parents. So a lot of this is talking about how to, teach these to your kids. But it can all be adapted to how do I develop these in myself as an adult as well. So involving the person who is setting the goal in the process. So what does that mean for you, right? Like you have to be the one that picks your goals. You can't just be like, well, everyone says that I should go to the gym for 30 minutes every single day. But if that's not a goal you care about, it's not going to work because you're not going to have the buy-in. right? You have to set a goal that's important to you. And with your kids, when you're trying to help them set goals, they have to have buy-in. It has to be something that's important to them. So involving them in the process is key. And that also goes with, well, we'll talk about that in a minute, right? Motivate. Motivation is not bribery, right? We have this in our heads that, well, in the real world, you're not going to get an M&M for every time you do da 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 da. Well, guess I want you to think about something. Do you have a job? I don't care how much you love your job. If you didn't get paid, would you still do your job? Right? We're all motivated by something. We go to work every day. We do our job because we're getting a paycheck at the end of 2 weeks, right? We reward ourselves all the time for doing things. Oh, I went to the gym 5 times this week, so I'm going to get myself an ice cream on Saturday. Motivators are not bribes. We all do this, right? We use what works. We motivate ourselves. We give ourselves that dopamine hit. If I do this thing, then I can do this thing. If I get the dishes done, then I'm going to let myself watch a show, right? If I'm doing the dishes, then I get to listen to said podcast. And I'm only going to let myself listen to said podcast while I'm doing laundry, while I'm doing the dishes. It is motivating us to do the things we don't want to do. So many times, well, in the real world, well, guess what? These kids are learning skills. They're not adults. And even adults, we motivate ourselves all the time in the real world. So, if it's screen time that works for your kid, if it's money, if it's candy, if it's a trip to the zoo, whatever works to get them to buy in and to work on the skill, to do the thing that they don't want to do, use it. 100%. Figure out what works and use it. The next one is work from where they are or where you are and not from where you think they should be. So we got to let go of outside expectations, right? Well, he's 12 years old. He should be able to do this by now. Well, he can't. And if we immediately jump to what the shoulds are, where they should be, rather than meeting them where they are, we'll not be successful. We have to figure out where they are and what the next step is from there, and then keep building on that. It's also, a factor to consider this is that delay in brain development, right? A lot. So kind of, I call it the 30% rule, right? That kids with ADHD are on average 30% delayed in these skills as compared to neurotypical kids. So for example, and it has to do with kind of other skills too, but executive skills in particular. But if you think about, a 12-year-old, that means that they are really functioning sometimes socially and in executive functions like they were 9. That gap gets bigger, right? A 6-year-old, 30% of 6-year-old is 4, 12 it's 9, 15, the 30% rule is showing that they're about on the level of a 10-year-old. So as that gap gets wider, right? If we don't meet them where they are, if we try and put the expectation on where they should be, and for ourselves as well, like, well, I'm an adult, I should be able to do this. Well, guess what? I can't. So it doesn't do us any good to focus on the where they should be, right? We got to start from where we are. Also, this calls in this asynchronous development, which is really common, particularly in twice exceptional kids. The gifted kids with disabilities, but also just in general, like they may be really great at one skill and really delayed in another. You might have a kid who can read on a 6th grade level in 2nd grade, but they can't write. Their writing is on a kindergarten level. That asynchronous development is extremely common. And just because they have done it before doesn't mean they can always do it. And I'm sure you see this with yourself. This is across the lifespan. Our capacities on different days are different. Our, stress levels, things can affect our ability to function. If you're sick, if you didn't get enough sleep last night, those things can all affect ADHD symptoms and particular executive functions. So just because I could manage it yesterday doesn't mean I'm going to be able to today. Recognizing that in ourselves and in our kids, and, where are you today? And what is the next best step? I'm going to put this starred comment back up from Jacqueline. Tricks for a parent to get buy-in from a kiddo to use the tools he has to help his executive functioning. So this is what we're talking about here, right? Involving them in the process and motivating and using their strengths. They have to know what those are. So going through some of these self-checks in books like the Smart but Scattered series, or getting a coach who can help them to see their strengths and hold them accountable and help with that motivation piece. But getting that buy-in is important, and small goals, meeting where you are. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? We have to start small and work our way up. We can't just try and do all the things all at once. If you've ever read anything by Dr. Ross Green, so his most popular book is called The Explosive Child, which isn't the best title for the book. I'm sure it was just catchy, but is this model called collaborative problem solving. And it's really useful when you're dealing with kids who have ODD in particular, things like that. But one of the concepts he talks about is this idea of like A, B, and C goals, right? Of looking at each situation as, is this something that plan A, plan B, or plan Z? Am I plan Aing this? I'm putting my expectations on it. Am I plan Cing this, which is, this is just not something we're going to address right now. So we're just going to put it in the basket over there and not worry about it. And the plan B things are the ones that problems we're currently working through. So when I'm talking about this kind of working from where you are, sometimes we have to go through that list of the things we want to improve, the goals we want to set, where we would like to be, and determine which one are we going to work on right now, because we can't do it all. And putting the rest of those things in that plan C basket of, not going to address this, not going to work on this, not going to worry about this right now, not going to let this part affect me, because that's not the goal I'm working on right now. This is a really tough one when I'm working with parents, to get them to not necessarily buy in, because a lot of parents will see why, but to actually do it in the day-to-day, right? Like, we're selecting this behavior to work on right now. We're working on, say, doing homework at the same time every day, right? Or we're working on sitting down at the dinner table together and having a positive dinner experience with the family. If that's what we're working on right now, we can't also be pinging, not turning homework in, and fighting with her brother. And we have to focus on this one goal, and we have to set the other things aside. We have to ignore them and not let them impact what we're doing, because otherwise we can't make progress on the goal that we're setting. And that's a goal for later down the line, right? So what is the expectation, and what are we focusing on, and ignoring the other things and not letting them impact us? As adults, when we're working on this with ourselves, we tend to be really hard on ourselves, especially people with ADHD, right? We have so much experience failing at our goals, so many experiences with failure, and feeling like we need to catch up on all the things all the time, right? Like, I have to be able to do all of this right now. it's not sustainable. It's not achievable. It's not realistic. And we can be really, really hard on ourselves when we can't meet those expectations because the expectations we're setting are not appropriate, right? They're too much, too fast. I could go on a soapbox for that for a long time, but I just want to encourage you as an adult who's trying to develop skills and set goals and work towards things to give yourself a break and recognize that you're doing better than you think you are, that you're not a complete and utter failure, and that you can make progress on small, manageable goals. And that as long as you're doing that, you'll get there eventually. And some of those things that those expectations and standards that you're putting on yourself, you won't get there because they don't need to be there to begin with, right? That you're putting expectations on yourself that are unnecessary. Yeah, I'm going to stop there for now because otherwise I'm going to go way down this road, but we will talk more about this. I'll write that down too. Giving ourselves a break, giving yourself grace, and in our goal setting. And the comparison trap, right? We do it with ourselves, we do it with our kids. We talked about using areas of strength to accommodate for areas of weakness. In those executive functions, you're going to have areas that you don't struggle with very much, and you're going to have areas that you struggle with a lot. Knowing what those different areas are, and again, a self-assessment can help with that. A coach can also help with that to help you see what your strengths are. But you know what you're good at. Use those strengths. Outsource other things and accommodate for areas of weakness. For me, the housework piece of it was way too much of a stretch on my executive function weaknesses. So I have outsourced some of it. We stay in a smaller house and we drive older cars, and we use some of that money to pay for a laundry service and for someone to help clean the house. I consider those accommodations for my ADHD. And I work hard so that we can be able to do that. We make sacrifices in other areas to be able to do that. And that's okay. Frequent praise. So there's some research that suggests that kids with ADHD will receive 20,000 more negative messages from parents, teachers, and peers by the age of 10. When I was in my teacher trainings, they wanted us to work towards a goal of 4-to-1 positive to negative, right? So 4 positive statements for any one critical or negative, or stop doing that. You did this wrong. 4-to-1. A lot of guidance on how to work with ADHD kids says we need more like a 12-to-1 ratio to make up for those additional 20,000 more negative messages from parents, teachers, and peers by the age of 10. That doesn't stop with kids in school, right? As adults, we receive those messages, whether they are directly spoken or implied, or whether or not we're just interpreting things that way because of this history of more negative messages. We assume that people are thinking these negative things, right? So that 12-to-1 ratio with kids, we need that. We need people in our lives who will give us those positives, and we have to give them to ourselves. We have to change that negative self-talk. Frequent praise and praising the effort. Even if the outcome is not what we wanted, praising that effort, because we know that sustained effort on something that is difficult is really hard with ADHD and with anyone with executive function deficits. giving ourselves credit for how hard we tried. Yeah, I didn't complete all of these tasks today, but I worked really hard on this one thing and I made progress. Um, Shifting our thinking to see what we have done as opposed to what we haven't accomplished. It's difficult because we have received all these negative messages and we've got a lot of negative self-talk to overcome. But I will tell you every time you're doing better than you think you are. You're not broken and you're not alone. And give yourself credit for your effort. Call in for reinforcements. Sometimes having a neutral third party helps. Kids won't always learn from their parents. I know mine won't. And that's where executive function coaching for kids or adults can be really beneficial, or an ADHD coach to work on things, besides just kind of the specifics of building executive skills. But having another person that you have to be accountable to and someone who can help you work through those goals, help you set those goals, help you set up systems for obtaining those goals, definitely something I recommend. That's why I do what I do. Any questions? I'm not going to give out all of that information. So let's talk about some different resources. I'm going to pull this down. We'll talk about some resources. I talked about books. I'm going to put some links here in the chat, and I'll also put them in the description for some of my favorite books. These are Amazon affiliate links. So, the usual, the disclaimers in the description that these are Amazon affiliate links, and I will earn a very small amount. That's not the right account. Hold on. You earn a small amount if you use this link, but all right, let's put some few links in the chat. I'm gonna put the link in for the time timer. That I love. And I will pull up YouTube so I can put it in the description as well. Maybe I'll just make a list and I'll put them in the description afterwards. All right, here's the link for the time timer. Ooh, a stream for teachers on how to support kids with ADHD. Yes, I can. That's a really good idea. Thanks, Shima. All right, there's the link for the time timer, the smaller one. I'll pull up the one. This one's good for. I'll pull up one that's good for. So this would be good for like just putting on a kid's desk, but for in the classroom, we've got this one. Here. This is a good one for in the classroom. There's another one too. that I actually like better than this one because it comes with a set, classroom set, and with different colors. So if you do centers or anything like that, it can be really good, or you can put them up on multiple places in the classroom. That's going to be this link here. Classroom set. Some books. We talked about Smart but Scattered. I'm going to put the adult one in the chat here. And then I will put some other versions in the description later. This is the Smart but Scattered Guide to Success, which is their most recent book. Sorry, typing and talking at the same time. That is geared towards adults and not students. Most of theirs are more geared towards students at different stages of life. For teachers or for schools, or to give to teachers at schools, this is where is it? This book here. For teachers at schools to learn how to coach students. This book is called Coaching Students with Executive Skills Challenges. It just came out this year. I was able to read advanced copies of the manuscript because this is basically the textbook for my executive function course with Peg Dawson and Richard Guare. It is step by step the process of coaching students. It's got all of the different assessments that you can use with kids. In an ideal world, there would be a trained special ed teacher or counselor or someone in every, at least secondary school, to help kids work on these. That is my, if I can affect change in the education system, this would be it. Is to get executive function coaches into schools. And this book is just phenomenal. It's just great. So if you do work with kids or you want to help your school people know how to work with kids, this is the book for you. Other resources. Follow the channel here. Oh yeah, I'll put the links in the description so you can look at them later. And if you can't order it through this link because of international stuff, that's just fine. I get what does it say? It'll tell me. Oh, I didn't put the right link in there. This is the link we want. I don't know, we get I don't know, it'll tell me. We get I don't know, 18 cents or something. It's not not something I'm super worried about, but if you do want to help support the channel a little bit, currently I'm not monetized, so this is the only way to do it. So I figure it's worth at least giving the option of that link. Additional resources. Follow me on Instagram. Nicole Miles Coaching is what it is over there. I put a lot of, I don't know, when I'm in content creation mode, a lot of stuff goes up, and then for a while there won't be, but it's another place you can reach out to me by DM there, or through the channel here. Comments, I read every comment. But yeah, those are going to be the books I recommend most. I'll put in some more additional kind of helps and resources, things, planners, things like that, in other streams, but those are kind of the basics for what kind of things we've talked about here. I do have a hard stop and have to go pick up kids from school. So I'm just going to check and make sure there's not any other questions I need to answer here. But thank you so much for being here on this Monday. I'm going to give myself the praise and the pat on the back for doing the dang thing today. Sometimes it's hard. Yes, get some sleep. Good night's rest is important. And I'm going to go pick up kiddos and then do some more work this afternoon. And thanks for being here. I'm going to try and put up, my goal is to have something up on the channel every day for this month of October. I'm already failing at that goal, so I'm just doing the best I can to put up additional content for this ADHD Awareness Month. Like the stream, comment, share anything from the channel on your social media platforms. It does help the channel to grow and help us reach that first goal. I'm hoping we can do something fun when we hit 200, and then that it just keeps growing. So thank you for being here. Remember, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're doing better than you think you are. I'll roll the outro, and I will see you all next time. If I can find it. There you go. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. This video is not a substitute for counseling, psychotherapy, medical, or mental health care. The information and advice shared here should not be used in place of any form of diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Information provided here does not involve diagnosis or treatment of medical or mental or psychological disorders. If you feel the need for professional support, please seek a local professional in your area. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only.